He's bluffing. Barnier slammed for vowing UK banks will lose pa.ssporting rights with EU. The EU chief negotiator insisted there is no legal way that an exception can be made for the UK's massive financial services sector, mockingly throwing back Theresa May's insistence that Brexit means Brexit. But he also sought to sweeten the bitter pill by promising that the bloc will pursue its most ambitious approach when it comes to a future free trade agreement, saying that he is not considering the possibility of a no-deal exit. Mr. Barnier made the remarks in a speech to the Centre for European Reform, think tank in Brussels just moments before he was due to update EU ministers on the progress of the Brexit talks to date. The Frenchman delivered a hard-hitting address, and typically blunt address which also included an ideological roadmap for the post-Brexit future of the EU that appeared will further fuel talk of him becoming the next Commission president. In his speech he said some figures within the government and the City of London are still clinging to the hope that a special deal can be sealed to secure ongoing single market participation for UK financial firms, but that this was impossible. Mr. Barnier said Brussels will never compromise on financial stability in the EU and will not weaken the rules that passporting rights require membership of the single market and adherence to the European Court of Justice. He said, on financial services, UK voices suggest that Brexit does not mean Brexit. Brexit means Brexit everywhere. They say there would be no changes in market access for UK established firms. They say that joint UK-EU rules would be decided in a new symmetrical process between the EU and the UK and outside of the jurisdictions of the ECJ. This would contradict the April European Council guidelines which stress the autonomy of the EU decision-making, the integrity of our legal order, and of the single market. The legal consequences of Brexit is that the UK financial service providers lose their EU passport. This passport allows them to offer their services to a market of 500 million consumers and 22 million businesses, but the EU will have the possibility to judge some UK rules as equivalent based on a proportional and risk-based approach. He added, the financial crisis was not so long ago. It destroyed value and millions of jobs. It was the cause of social suffering including in the UK. Let's not have a short memory. We will never compromise on financial stability in the EU, and in the Eurozone, never. However, his remarks were immediately slammed by UKIP MEP Gerard Batten who said, Barnier is huffing, puffing and bluffing. The EU needs the City of London more than it needs the EU. Simply put, the EU cannot afford to lose access to the city's expertise since it raises 85% of pan-European capital financing. Third countries working in the financial sector already rely on global regulatory equivalence, not EU legal subservience. On the prospect of a trade deal, the Frenchman said the UK needed to decide whether it wanted to stay close to the European economic model or not, and that the UK's reply to these questions will be very important and even decisive because it will shape the discussion on our future relationship. And he insisted Brussels wants to secure an agreement, stressing, this is why we've started internal preparations with member states to be ready to talk about the future as soon as we will have agreed on how to settle the past. The EU will of course be ready to offer its most ambitious FTA approach. Elsewhere in his address Mr. Barnier laid into Eurosceptics talking about the possibility of a no deal, whilst saying that the EU will press ahead with plans for further integration including a Eurozone budget and European army without Britain. He said, this stronger EU will want to have a close relationship with the UK. We have a shared history and this history started long before the last 44 years. That is why the no deal is not our scenario, even though we will be ready for it. I regret that this no deal option comes up so often in the UK public debate. Only those who would ignore or want to ignore the current benefits of EU membership can say that no deal would be a positive result. There are 3 keys to building a strong partnership with the UK. First, we need to agree on the terms for the UK's orderly withdrawal. The 27 member states and the EU Parliament have been always very clear on what it means and we have been consistent. Our priority on settling the accounts accurately. We owe this to taxpayers as well as to all those benefiting from EU funding projects in the UK as well as in the EU.